like packets.
It is.
I can't
It's
stand it.
99 cents.
I'm not paying those 99 cents.
Just for 50.
Well, you know what happens, so you can go through general and then iPhone storage, and they show all the apps and how much storage you're taking. What happens is YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all the social media ones, they increase in size the longer you keep them on there. So what you gotta do every once in a while, you gotta delete TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, and then reinstall. So if you look at it, you're like, whoa, they're taking up like 2 gigabytes sometimes, 3 gigabytes. Especially like if you haven't deleted them in a long time. So you just have to delete them and reinstall them every once in a while, and then you'll get all this extra space on your phone. Something. All right, cool. Okay, we got 2 presentations today, right? 2? 3. 3 presentations. We're good over here, right? Yeah. Here it is. All right, so what's going to happen Thursday will be our last day of class, and we'll talk about late adulthood and dying, actually, Thursday, and then maybe we could bring snacks if anybody wants to. We could talk about other things as well, too, like career opportunities and things like that. And then next Tuesday, we'll have our final online, right, on Canvas, just like the midterm. Sounds good? Okay. Yes?
Is it going to be like multiple choice? Like,
It's going to be kind of exact same thing as the midterm.
Okay.
Just going to cover the later chapters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'll also upload the slides too, so you can have them. The slides available.
Is it like going to be open like just that day, right? Exactly.
Yeah, just that day, but like midterm, I'll leave it open for a while, right? So it'll open up that day and I'll maybe give you to the end of the day. But make sure you complete it, right? Because I want to get grades in, as soon as possible. And if there's anything else you're missing, like a discussion post or whatnot, get it in. Try to get in as soon as possible. I say try to do it all before next week starts. Sounds good? And I'll put an announcement on Canvas so everybody else will know what's going on. All right, so we got 3 presentations, and we're going to talk today about middle adulthood. So we left off talking about from 18 to about 30. We said that was early, or what they call emerging adulthood. Right? It's definitely expanded over time because people still live at home. They could be 29, 28 years old, living at home, haven't started a family, haven't gotten married, still trying to figure it out, maybe saving money, or it could be cultural things too, right? Maybe they just like to live home, they want to live with the family, with their family. People are different phases a lot in that kind of age group. Middle adulthood, so we're talking, this is about age 30 to 59. Right, so like from ages 30 all the way to 59. What we kind of see is this kind of cohort age group is not researched a lot. Well, there's not a lot of substantial amount of research that comes from it. Why? Because the changes tend to be kind of gradual for the most part. Maybe towards the end of that age group, then they get a little bit more stark changes, I would say. But I'm gonna go through both the physical, cognitive, and social emotional today so we can wrap up this, right? All right, he would say, hey, one of a few things, hey, there's some different timing of the changes, right? It's all not gonna happen at the same time. If we're talking between ages 30 and 59. Some people may have some of these changes earlier on, some people may have them later on. Why? Because we say we're still involved with nature and nurture. What are their genetics? And on top of that, what environment do you live in? Are you stressed out? Are you not eating right? Other factors, right? So like it really kind of depends. Presbyopia. Here we start to see people's vision change a lot, right? Farsightedness, right? Especially one. What kind of happens here is that the lens in our eyes thicken over the years and they become less flexible. So that means that light is not easily shined to the back of your eye to process a lot of information. So basically, you see a lot of people in this age bracket, older people, right, squint. They can't see things too far off, right? Thus, you'll see people getting reading glasses, right? Maybe they can see things fairly well, but maybe their night vision is not getting good. Now they need to wear glasses in the nighttime when they drive, or they need to have glasses when they read, right? Maybe they don't wear them all the time, but they wear them for certain circumstances. Which means that, hey, you know what? What we're starting to see here is the sensations that we have, the systems that run it, are starting to kind of deteriorate, right? And if they deteriorate a little bit, that means that our reaction time is not as great as maybe your age group, right? Because think if your ear systems are kind of deteriorating, you may not pick up the sound as quick as, say, your age group, right? Say for me, my age group, versus yours, right? And even seeing things may not be processing. So with that, we say, hey, you know, if the systems in place, the systems are not, you know, kind of, if they're decreasing in some way, then we also say, hey, reaction time in our brain, the responses are not as fast, which means these signals are not shooting as fast. Or things are being pruned. We talked about pruning. Another big thing too is neurogenesis. Remember, like, hey, how do you make a new connection in the brain, right? You're like, well, one, it has to be something challenging. If you're not challenging yourself in this age group, which means you're just doing the same old stuff. You finally got your career, you go to work every day, but you repeat the same things all the time, then you say you're not having neurogenesis, you're not having new connections in your brain, you're just having the same old connections all the time. So what we see happen there is that happens to be kind of a lack of neurogenesis too. But here, talking about vision, we have presbyopia, we say, hey, you know, our visual acuity starts to decline, right? Especially for night vision. Why? Because thickness of the lens doesn't allow for more light. You need more light in order to see things in the dark, right? Just like with your iPhone, you might complain it doesn't take good nighttime photos. Why? It doesn't allow, the sensor doesn't allow for a lot of light. Other phones may have bigger sensors or more sensors complex for dim lighting, right? Kind of the same concept with your eye. All right, the next, now we're into hearing, right? We say there's a little bit of hearing loss as well too, which means for the most part it has to deal with high-pitched sounds. Low, deep sounds tend to be normal. You can still hear them fairly well in this age group for the most part. But high-pitched sounds, right, not fairly easily heard for this age group as opposed to maybe your age group, right? We're saying, hey, some other things, contextual factors can matter. Are you listening to your AirPods at full volume for the last 5 years? You know, what other things, what kind of environment you work in, et cetera, right? Are you exposed to intense noises? All right, skin, right? We have epidermis, dermis, hypodermis, right? We say epidermis is outermost layer. A lot of changes. We kind of see a lack of elasticity. But one of the main things to be concerned with this age group from a physical perspective is that we're talking about hormones, right? Women will tend to lose estrogen around this age group. Men will tend to lose testosterone. And once you start to do that, you see a lot of physical changes. Not just, we'll talk about the reproductive system, right? Where you don't have the ability to maybe produce a child as easily as you could before, but there are also some real physical changes because of things, right? But like here with the skin, we tend to see more wrinkling, sunspots, a lot of exposure to sun, people not putting on sun protection, things of that nature. Women tend to experience a lot of these changes sooner, right? So we say, hey, 18.4 million non-surgical cosmetics procedures were conducted in the U.S. This data is around from 2020. So we say, hey, you know what? Women tend to experience a lot of the changes within the skin sooner than men, right? Once again, probably highly related to estrogen, things of that nature. Because we could say, hey, you know what? In your mid-30s, you're gonna have a geriatric pregnancy, which means that might after the mid-30s, you might not be able to have children anymore. All kind of related to the hormones changing in your body. And we'll talk about things after the fact like menopause, where you're no longer having a menstrual cycle, or it starts to fade, or it starts to get kind of weird, how that's all related to estrogen changes, right? So we see a lot of cosmetic procedures, Botox. For this age group, we see a lot of Botox, a lot of fillers, a lot of people trying to regain their youth, lip injections, right? All sorts of things, trying to regain or reclaim maybe some of the elasticity, collagen, things that they used to have that tends to be going away. And also just the burden to try to be physically attractive, probably more so for women than men, right? So that might lead to a lot of those cosmetic procedures. All right, body composition. We get things, right? We have a loss of bone tissue, osteoporosis, body composition, isometric strength. We say for men, you're losing testosterone, which means you're probably losing a lot of muscle mass. You need muscle mass in order to be strong, right? Highly related to testosterone, which you tend to see a lot of people in the gym taking supplements to boost testosterone, right? To some degree, because lack of it. Now we start to lose calcium, right? And calcium is related to bone tissue and bone development and bone health. And thus we start to see people develop osteoporosis unless they maybe take supplements or have some sort of diet that kind of helps with that. All right, menopause, right? We say the sex hormones, once again, estrogen, testosterone, right? You're like, hey, we got different things dealing with menopause. Say menopause will be an end of a monthly cycle, right? End of menstruation. But before that, right, you may start to see some changes in body temperature and how you feel about that, what they call hot flashes, right? So women may complain around this age group of experiencing hot flashes. So probably later in their 40s, I would say it come. Some people get it early, right? Perimenopause, right? Kind of the early symptoms of it, maybe in your late 30s, where you start to feel agitated. You feel hot. You feel annoyed. Your heart's racing out of nowhere. You're sweating for no reason at all, right? Irritability, things of that nature. Some people use hormone replacement therapy to kind of help with that, but eventually it does lead to menopause. And then with men, right? We say, hey, men start to have lower excretion of semen, right? And they may have lower excretion of sperm, right? Say sperm was within semen, right? So both of maybe the fluids within that are of a lower rate, right? But particularly the sperm count tends to lower, which makes it harder to fertilize an egg during ovulation. And once again, ovulation is an occurrence due to hormones, right? Estrogen, in order to produce an egg that can be fertilized, right? Now, men don't tend to have a male menopause, right? Which means men can have children forever, right? Some, or maybe most men. But men may have, just a decline in testosterone, but a lot of that doesn't give off the same symptoms, right? The irritability and the fatigue and all of that, as maybe women would experience. All right, health. Interesting, you start to, at this age, you may start to see people die. You may start going to more funerals, right? Because people who were once in their 30s and 40s when you were a child are now in their 70s and 80s, and they're dying. And so that changes the way you think about things, right? It changes the way you perceive. You start to think about your own death. You're like, oh, this is real. You know, you may not have as much time as you think ahead, right? But with that, you start to think about other things, right? Cancer tends to happen much later in life, right? Kind of theory that, hey, there's a potential that some kind of cancer may get all of us if we live long enough, right? Something, right? Some form of it. Heart disease is a big one as well too, right? Related to stress and anxiety, but also related to genetics or poor diet or poor environment. And with that, we say, hey, you know what? If you're having any sort of experiences where you feel that you're thinking a lot about your life and your death, you're concerned about illnesses, you might get depressed, right? And when people start to experience depression, they may want to get some substances to help relieve that mentality, and thus they start to get into other things, right? Such as opioids, right? And we say, well, opioids, interesting because we deal with things like neuroepinephrine, which is like things to regulate pain in our body, which essentially is painkillers. So now you're like, hey, give me some opiates because depression is pain. You don't want to think about painful things too much. So people start getting involved with drugs to take away the pain, right? Whether it be physical, could be physical pain or even mental pain for that degree. Cancer can be caused for many host of reasons. It could be environmental, could be diet, could be genetic, and it could, remember we said epigenetics. You're like, hey, there is something, a gene not turned on, but in the right environment, the right conditions, it kind of can get turned on, and depending on what it is, can cause things to create cancer, right? Cardiovascular disease markers and heart attack symptoms. Unfortunately, a lot of times you can't predict when you're going to have a heart attack, right? Usually what happens is you have one, now you go to the doctor to treat it, and now you got to try to change your lifestyle. But highly unpredictable, and this is why cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer in the United States. Right? Most people will die of heart disease, as we call it, right? Most people in the U.S., maybe about close to 20-something%, maybe 25% of people, right? A quarter of all people in America might die of heart disease, right? You think about it, stressful life, stressful environment, poor food, right? A lot of saturated fats, all these different things, right? Diabetes, I think it's projected by 2030, they're saying that potentially half of adult Americans might be diabetic, or at least pre-diabetic, for the most part. Right? So very prevalent, right? You become insulin resistant. You can prevent it by lowering carbs, starches in your diet. Carbs and starches convert into sugars, so it's not just sugars, right? Not just direct sugars. There's things related that could transform into sugars, and that can help prevent some of those things. Stress, right? So for this age group, you're like, well, these people tend to be maybe married, stressful, tend to have maybe stressful careers, right? Because people are trying to plan for retirement, taking care of children, maybe children as adults in college, like maybe your parents, or maybe you have teenagers or even younger children, right? So for me, I have young children, a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. So you're like, hey, it can be very stressful, right? So with that stress, we say, hey, there's an up and down of fight, flight, or fight response. And we said that parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system, up and down, heart rate, blood pressure, blood glucose, right? What should you do? You're preparing yourself for bad things to happen. If you do it too long enough, chronic stress, then everything can go out of order, right? Your mind, your body, all sorts of issues. Some of us are less reactive to it. Some of us are very sensitive to stress. Who here is sensitive to stress? You feel stressed. The tiniest thing stress you out. What do you do to cope with it? What do you do to manage it? have like something like, hey, I'm gonna take 20 seconds, catch my breath.
Are you trying to answer? I don't recognize, I don't think I recognize it sometimes. But I
Gotcha.
do feel like stress sometimes.
But you think about it maybe after the fact, you like,
Once like maybe I finished something that was stressing me out, or like now it's like.
gotcha, once it's over.
Yeah.
But preparing for it is a stressful thing. Once it's over, you can release it, right? Yeah, lots of techniques. Some people think like, hey, small things, breathing techniques. It actually works. If you take 3 like really strong breaths, physically you'll feel different. All right, so let's try it. Let's take 3 deep breaths, and I mean deep, like suck in all the air, hold it for like 3 seconds, and let it out. Let's wait for Maserati.
Oh, sorry.
No, but I said, well, wait for you because we're gonna do a breathing exercise.
Oh, okay.
All right, so we say, because we're talking about stress. We're like, hey, small, tiny things that you could keep in your pocket to pull out when you're stressed, will back out. Breathing is the easiest one, right? So we say we're gonna take 3 deep breaths, and I mean deep, like sucking all the air possible in your lungs, hold it for 3 seconds, and release it. Let's just do it twice. And let's just see, do you feel any different physically, right? So here's our first one. 1, 2, 3, in. Okay. 1, 2, 3, in. Anybody feeling different? You feel more relaxed? Just a little bit? I'm telling you, it works. Now, you can take more too, right? Some people did do 5 and they feel really relaxed. All right, so just small things that you could do to kind of help up stress, right? Help you stress out. The other part is just being mindful. Mindfulness is just like, hey, I'm stressed out right now. Why am I stressed out? I shouldn't be stressed out, right? That's kind of mindfulness. Just being aware that you are stressed. You're like, maybe I shouldn't. Like fighting against your own mind to be stressed. All right, fluid and crystallized intelligence. I think we talked about this before, but like, hey, you know what? You all have fluid intelligence, maybe more so than your parents, which means your parents are kind of set in their ways of thinking and things like that, right? Because they're probably not exposed to as much new information and new experiences as you are, as young people interacting with all different types of people and all new sorts of information, and maybe even technology and social media, right? So you have more fluid, which means your mind is wired for new things, right? You're okay to adapt to new things. Older people in this group, in this age group, middle adulthood, maybe not so much, right? Unless they're active with it, that they're seeking out adventurous lives and want adventurous experiences, traveling, things like that. But if they're just working, kind of doing the same old, they're probably lacking fluid intelligence. Attention and memory decline, processing speed, we kind of talked about that. Job satisfaction. All right, so things like, hey, gender pay gap, right? Women kind of cutting it close on making the same as men, or even at this point, kind of in many areas are making more than men and far more educated than men. So that kind of pay gap is kind of narrow. Increases in job satisfaction. A lot of people hate their job, to be honest, right? In the sense that if you do something long enough and you feel like what you do has honestly no true meaning or no true purpose, like you feel like you actually don't make any kind of change in the world at all, you'll become increasingly dissatisfied with the job regardless of how much they pay you, right? There's maybe only so long you could play this is what they make a lot of money type of game, right? And if you work somewhere that you hate, it's probably, regardless of the money they pay you, it's probably not good for your mental health, right? You're literally in an environment that you probably are very unhappy in, and you spend that much time at work, it can help, it can hurt. So a lot of people do get job burnout, right? They think like, hey, I want this awesome job, they make so much money, I'm gonna be awesome, I'm good at everything I want, and then you get burnt out at the job because the job gives you no satisfaction. You feel like you're not making any change in the world to some degree, right? Happens a lot within that age group. All right, and then lastly, we will talk about the social emotional aspect. In the mythical middle adulthood. All right, midlife crisis. Anyone ever heard of a midlife crisis? Yeah? Hey, any of you ever seen your parents or grandparents go through some sort of midlife crisis? No? How would you explain what a midlife crisis is? What do you think that really means? We're saying 30 to 59-year-old people.
I
Yes.
think I have an example. So my aunt, I think she's in a midlife crisis because she's taken a lot of erratic decisions. Like, she got her first tattoo at the age of 40. She dyed her hair pink. She got a belly button piercing. And like, I don't know, I don't think that's like normal behavior for like a 40-year-old.
Yeah, okay. There's an example. Anyone else? Like, hey, you know what? A crisis is when you come up against something and you feel maybe you have identity or role confusion, or you feel that you missed out on something, right? Or you feel that you were too busy. And what happened in this age group? You were busy raising the kids. If you're raising the kids, maybe you wanted to look cool. Maybe you wish you had the cool car. Maybe you wish you could have got the tattoos or something, but life was busy, right? And you dedicated all your life to either a marriage, to your children, or the job that you work all day, every day, right? And at some point you may kind of wake up and say, wow, I've been doing this for a long time, but I don't feel like I've really been me, right? I don't feel like I really did anything I truly wanted to do. I did everything for the family or something like that. So those types of things can happen. And then later on you may see somebody getting a bunch of tattoos, go get a convertible, right? Or something else, right? Maybe kind of reverting back to sort of a preceding age group. You're like, oh man, that person dressed like they're 18, right? Kind of going back. So we're saying, hey, quite a few people, right? We're talking about almost 1/5 of people experience some sort of crises. Remember we talked about Erickson. Erickson said there's always some sort of crises that's gonna happen in life, constantly, right? And it has to do with mistrust or trust, guilt, shame, something of the sort, right? So this makes it no difference just because we're older. Stressful transition process, right? Something may have shaken up our lives too. It could be a divorce, right? And they're going through a crisis of that. It could be children leaving the house. Like, wow, children are 18, they're leaving. Now what do I do with my life? I was used to them being here all the time. They were my identity. Who am I without my children? Some people may feel they have no identity outside of these things. Or they lost their job. You're like, man, your identity was your job. You had such a cool job, now you got fired. But that was your identity. Now who are you without it? People will go through some sort of crisis to transition, right? Something can happen that's very stressful. Some people can use it as a positive time to say like, hey, I'm glad that this happened. Why? Because it's a learning experience for me to finally be my authentic self. Right? People are like, hey, this is positive because I will shed my skin. I've been living to be other people's expectations, and now I have my own expectations. Now I can finally be me and be my authentic self. Generativity versus stagnation, right? Generativity was like, hey, giving back to the next generation, right? Helping young people, raising children. Now what happens is, since a lot of people are not having children or waiting so long that maybe they missed their window to have children, right? With the exception of maybe having a sperm bank or freezing their eggs or something. If they missed their window, they could be miserable in their 40s and 50s. They're like, I wanted kids, I was too busy. I waited too long or something. Right? Now they're seeing other people with their children and they're kind of having envy and depression because of these things, right? Because a lot of people do kind of like generativity, meaning like they're gonna leave something behind on this earth beyond them, or that they're giving back to the next generation of some sort, right? All right, and then seasons of life, right? We hear people talk about, oh, I'm in this season of my life, right? We say it's a common set of phases. Could be a reflective season, could be a season for growth. All sorts of seasons that we could think of, but they're basically life structured and have some sort of transition to them from one stage to the next. All right, sexuality, modest decline in activity, right? Physical and psychosocial changes. Erectile dysfunction, more common. What we said with those hormones, testicles start to shrink, sperm, right? Start to be less, muscle starts to be less. A lot of changes there, physical changes. For women, you say, hey, bone density starts to be less. Now you may have bone issues, osteoporosis. Another thing too, sex drive decreases as well too, right? And going back to menopause, there's a few things that happen with menopause. One is that the female vagina tends to dry up. It doesn't provide as much lubrication as it, which can kind of make sex painful. Right? The vaginal canal can narrow and shorten, which once again can make sex not an enjoyable thing, right? The walls can kind of thin out as well too. Men suffering their own things, erectile dysfunction, right? All sorts of things. You're like, well, that's gonna cause a lot of, because a normal, natural, healthy sex life has been proven over and over again that if it's healthy, it has a ton of benefits. And so if people kind of avoid like sex or things like that in this age, they can get depressed, they can have guilt and shame, erectile dysfunction, right? They feel that they're not a man, they feel like he's not a man, a real man or something. All these kind of concepts that people have, as well as women, right? The challenges there. So we're like, hey, sexuality is huge of an issue with middle adulthood. Right? We see a decline in activity, we see all the hormonal changes and what they do to the body, and right, in men. And what's so fascinating that we're seeing now is like, men are having erectile dysfunction issues in their 20s, right? Like needing enhancements very early on, right? And so there's a lot of research that needs to be done there. And then lastly, we can just talk about the self. Right? We say there's a self-concept, self-esteem, hey, your possible selves that affect on well-being and functioning. So in essence, to say like, hey, shifts over adulthood, our beliefs about what is possible. Right? At this stage, we're thinking, hey, maybe some things are not possible anymore. Like think if you're an athlete and you reach 40, you're like, can't do it anymore. How do you address that? Well, maybe you're like, well, maybe being an athlete is not everything. Maybe I could do something else, be a coach, right? Start a team or something like that. Right? Looking at different alternative possibilities so that we can remain happy about who we are and our abilities. All right, I'll end there. And so now we will have our presentations. Did you email them to me or do you just want to connect your laptop?